Mr. Grover, there is a beautiful movie you played in, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, that unfortunately isn't available in Italy in any digital platform. I would like to know what kind of experience has it been to work with a young director in a movie like that with two young...
The Last Black Man in San Francisco, yeah. It was so important for me because that's my home. That's where I was born and raised and still live. And it brought back memories of my coming of age in San Francisco. I've only lived in New York and San Francisco and Portland, Oregon briefly. But there was the incredible thing of working with young people who in their script visited all the neighborhoods that I grew up in, all the places that have been part of my life. And when you live in a place long enough, you become so attached to those moments. They're part of your memory bank in a different way. Mm-hmm. Because you remember not only when you're an adult, but you remember when you're a child, and you remember all those moments that you experience it with your parents and your siblings, and all of that. My mother and father absolutely loved San Francisco, and my mother referred to San Francisco as God's country. So all those are the kind of ways in which the orientation, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, my mother's from Georgia. Maybe part of my life will be. The last part of my life will be in Georgia. Mm-hmm. I'm very associated with those two states, mm-hmm. California and Georgia. So, but it was a very fulfilling film for me, and sometimes I feel like the last black man in San Francisco with gentrification.
Of course.
Everything else, it's pretty much. Rare you get a chance in a film and to be able to kind of really highlight or showcase a city that I really love.
You are a civil rights activist. Do you think cinema has the power and the responsibility to help the audience, people, to better understand our past and the world we live in?
Well, when I think of myself, certainly I came up through an extraordinary moment in San Francisco history, moments in the United States history and world history as well. So there's this kind of association with that post-World War II, what they call child, and that's one of the things that I'm proud of, and because I've had not only an opportunity to watch history in another way, internationally, domestically, mm-hmm. locally, and at the same time being able to understand that history in the process of modernity that happens to human beings. When I was born a year after the first atomic bomb was thrown. It's changed the world, changed the nature of the world. I was born, I was 15 years old, 14 years old when when the first astronauts to the moon, something like that. All those things became and became center points of my own growth and sense of nationhood. I went to school at San Francisco State College and was involved in the longest student strike in the United States history. So that had an impact on my relationship to the much larger picture. Being an artist, in a sense, gave me an idea of reflecting on the role that art can play in transforming our communities and the role it can play in understanding who we are what we can be, what challenge are. All those things are the things that question, I think, my generation, and not only my generation, but subsequent generations and those generations that were before. That kind of look and try to understand what role does the individual play in the creation of a just state. I came up in that moment of television, so the images that happen in relationship to what we have were visual to us. And sometimes the visuality of that does several things. What it does is, on one hand, it makes you closer to the situation, but it also could alienate you from the situation as well, because you're no longer reading, you're no longer understanding and using your imagination in the same way as you do with television. Yeah, I mean, in the same way you do with reading. You don't have the same kind of clarity, I think, and try to understand. So the combination of both of those, being able to see it, being able to imagine it. Albert Einstein says that imagination is more than knowledge, more important than knowledge. So all those kind of things that I think and have shaped some sense of who I expect to be, what my expectations of myself, and that also changes as you get along in time. You know, I'm 3/4 of a century old.
My last question is about Lethal Weapon. My last question is about Lethal Weapon. Why this movie is so beloved, in your opinion?
I think it's a moment. There's so many things happen precede this, you know, in terms of filmmaking, and the idea that it brings elements that are part of Black life to some sense, you know, a stable family, a man who is committed to his family, and not only committed to his family, but also committed to something else, you know. And once some people may say it glorifies, you know, police work and all the other guys. So there's something else about Lethal Weapon and the issues that it brought to our attention, you know. The whole idea, in Lethal 2, I was just amazingly proud that Lethal 2 was boycotted, or was not boycotted, but Lethal 2 was banned from South Africa indefinitely because it dealt with the issue of the anti-apartheid movement. Now, I've been involved in the anti-apartheid movement and all the liberation movements from the early to mid-'70s, even as a student. So all these kind of things were important for me. The statements that it tried to make, the proliferation of guns, and money laundering, etc. You know, immigration with Chinese immigrants, forced immigration. All those issues that I think it said found resonance in a much larger context than and through Lethal Weapon as well.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.